The man was nameless, but each day he was called by a different saint, and so he began to forget the name he once carried. Pietro, or Matteo, perhaps Giuliano. It no longer mattered. It was winter in Venice in the year 1543, and the fog had curled into the alleys like spilled milk from heaven. The bells of San Zaccaria rang dull beneath the weight of mist, and the lagoon stood still as stone. In a cloistered cell near the convent walls, within a forgotten quarter of the city, a man sat beneath a single window and was not allowed to sleep. He was not tortured. He was not accused. He was not even condemned. He had been chosen. The records that survive call him l'osservato, the observed. The physician was named Girolamo da Vercelli, a scholar of humors and magnetisms, favored by the Council of Ten for his loyalty and quiet intellect. In the margins of a vellum-bound folio, dated February 1543, he wrote, "To deprive a man of sleep entirely, not with pain, but with vigil, may reveal more than fire ever could. Perhaps the soul, unanchored from its nightly repairs, may loosen its secrets." And so the experiment began. He was removed from his prison and placed in a repurposed cell once used by monks for silent retreat. It was clean, bare, and smelled of wax. A single straw mat remained in the corner, but he was told not to lie on it. A stool was offered, a table, a candle, and 3 watchers who would not let his eyes close. He was given food, broth mostly, warmed bread, olive mash, and water scented faintly with rosemary. Each day a new name was given to him. "Good morning, San Giovanni," they would say. "Awake, San Marco." "Do not sleep, San Lorenzo." He began answering to all of them. The first day was uneventful. He sat. He looked at the candle. He did not speak. The watchers hummed softly. They took turns shaking his shoulder when his head dipped. They struck small chimes when his eyelids fluttered too long. The physician watched from behind the carved grate. Sleep deprivation was not unknown in Renaissance Europe, but it was considered more madness than medicine. Only in this cloister, and under silence, was it treated as inquiry. On the 3rd day, the man began to whisper. He spoke in Latin, though he was uneducated. He recited fragments of the Psalms, broken phrases, half-rhythms. He asked if the candle had moved, if it was watching him, if its flame remembered things he had forgotten. The candle was never replaced. It was measured, scraped, studied. Each night they extinguished it and lit it anew from the previous day's wick. On the 5th day, the man forgot where he was. He asked for his mother. Then he said he had no mother. Then he asked again. The watchers did not answer. They were instructed only to prevent sleep. One watched the eyes. One watched the posture. One watched the breath. Girolamo wrote. On the 5th night, the subject began to count breaths aloud. I asked why. He said, "It's the only thing the dark does not steal." Sleep is not merely unconsciousness. It is architecture, a scaffolding of chemistry and shadow that holds the self together. Without it, the mind drifts, first at the edges, then at the core. By the 7th day, the man no longer spoke to the watchers. He began naming the corners of the room. "That one is where the wolves live," he said. "That one is where the stone sings. That one is mine. That one is yours." The watchers made no reply. He sang then, softly, not songs of the street or the church, but slow, endless notes, unbroken, like birdsong slowed to human breath. Girolamo wrote again. It is not pain that undoes him. It is the softness of absence, like a lantern without oil. He slept for 4 seconds on the 8th day. One of the watchers had blinked too long. The man's head dropped. His shoulders relaxed. His mouth slackened. And then he jerked upward and screamed, not in fear, but in fury. "I left," he said. "I was there. Why did you bring me back?" They did not answer. From that point forward, he refused to blink. He propped his eyes open with trembling fingers. When he could no longer hold them, he wept. On the 9th day, he claimed to have seen his own birth in the corner of the room. "Was I born watching?" he asked. "Did I come out staring?" They did not know. The physician noted that the man's pulse had become erratic. His breath was shallow, then deep, then shallow again. But his mind, though cracked, seemed newly aware of time. He asked for the date, then said the date was false, then began naming years that had not yet passed. "This is the year the sky forgets to close," he said. On the 10th night, the watchers hesitated. One had grown sick, claiming he too had begun to dream while awake. Another refused to return the next evening. Only one remained constant, a mute novice from the convent nearby, who never spoke, only observed. Girolamo asked the novice what he had seen. The novice traced a circle on the table with waxed fingers. A circle, unbroken, like a ring, like an eye. That night, the candle guttered. Its flames swayed violently, though no draft could be found. The man stared at it and laughed. "It's you," he said. "The flame is you. You are what watches me." And then, for a moment, he seemed at peace. But it passed, and he began to rock. Sleep, when denied long enough, does not wait quietly. It intrudes. In waking visions. In emotional collapse. In memory that folds upon itself like spoiled parchment. He called himself San Luca, then San Pietro, then simply he. On the 12th day, the man bit his tongue. Not by accident. He said he did not wish to taste himself anymore. Blood stained his lips. He wept. He spoke no words for 2 days. Girolamo continued his notes, but less frequently. The watchers were no longer reliable. The physician no longer trusted what he saw. The candle began to melt slower, though no one could explain why. The wax cooled in strange shapes. One watcher swore the drip marks formed a Latin phrase. Somnus non pedit eum. Sleep will not seek him. It was not recorded whether this was true. The wax was discarded before it could be verified. The man no longer Saturday he stood. Always. When he was asked why, he said, "If I sit, I fall." By the 15th day, his skin had paled, his hair matted. He smelled of copper and ash, and yet he still watched the candle. Girolamo asked him, gently, what he saw. "Nothing," the man said. "And that is the worst thing. I see it perfectly, the nothing that watches me back." And so ended the 15th day, and so the candle burned lower. No one knew if the experiment would continue. The council had stopped sending letters. The physician had stopped writing to Rome. The novice sat in the corner. He no longer watched the man. He watched the candle. And the candle, it seemed, watched both of them. The 16th day began in silence. He had not spoken for hours. His lips were dry, eyes sunken, knees trembling beneath his robes. The man they called nothing, neither prisoner, nor criminal, nor name, stood at the edge of the candlelight, gazing not at the flame now, but at the floor beneath it. There, he said, the shadows curled upward. The watchers had changed again. Only the mute novice remained from the first week. The others, too disturbed, too ill, too superstitious, were replaced by servants of the council who had not yet seen the signs. They, too, would not last. In his final full record, Girolamo da Vercelli wrote, "He has not lain down in 17 days. He refuses even the cot. He eats when directed, but swallows without chewing. He sees things in the mortar. He believes the candle speaks. His skin is cold though the room is warm. His breath halts and begins without rhythm. His thoughts are no longer human. And yet he is alive." There were no more questions to ask. No confessions. No hypothesis. No crime to judge. The experiment had shifted, unspoken, from inquiry to observance. A kind of reverence now surrounded the sleepless man. On the 18th night, the man finally lay down. Not from exhaustion, not from pain, but with an eerie gentleness, as though told by something unseen to rest his body while his mind stood watch. He did not close his eyes. The candlelight flickered over him. His hands were folded at his chest. His lips were slightly parted. His gaze remained fixed on the vaulted stone ceiling. He whispered, "I see the sea above me, but it does not move." The novice crossed himself. That night, 2 of the new watchers fled the cloister. One claimed he saw his own face in the candle. The other claimed the wax whispered names he had never spoken aloud. Girolamo no longer watched from the grate. He came into the room now, alone, and sat across from the man. No instruments, no paper, only the candle between them. He asked, "Do you know why we did this?" The man did not move. He asked again, "Were you sent by God, or did we send you away from him?" The man blinked. Then he said, "It is not God who sleeps. It is only man who dreams." And he wept. Sleep deprivation, in its terminal stages, is not merely fatigue. It is dissolution. The immune system fails. The heartbeat stutters. But most profoundly, the mind begins to forget how to be itself. The self unthreads. By the 20th day, he could no longer speak. Not for lack of breath, but from some deeper refusal. His eyes moved. His limbs twitched. But his voice was gone. Still, the watchers remained. They kept the candle lit. They measured wax. They listened to silence. And Girolamo stopped taking notes entirely. He was no longer a physician. He was a mourner for something not yet dead. At dusk on the 22nd day, the man stood. Without aid, without command. He moved to the candle and placed his fingers around its flame. He did not flinch. He looked to the novice and nodded once. Then sat again. That night, the novice carved a symbol into the wall with a shard of glass. A circle inside a square. No one knew its meaning. When asked why, the novice signed only. He asked me to. The candle began to lean. Its wax pooled in strange rivulets, across the table, down the stool, toward the man's feet. The watchers debated extinguishing it, fearing fire. But the physician refused. "Let it go where it wills," he said. On the 23rd day, something changed. The man no longer tracked movement. His eyes were fixed now on some inward distance. The watchers began to nod off without realizing. The novice claimed the air in the room had thickened, like honey in the lungs. And Girolamo, pale, disheveled, no longer writing, spoke aloud to the candle as though to a person. "If sleep is a gate, then show us what lies behind it unguarded." There was no answer. Only the drip of wax and the shallow breath of the man who refused to close his eyes. By the 24th day, the physician sent a letter to the council. "The experiment is no longer yielding data, but still we are watched. I do not know if it is by him or through him. I request permission to end it." No reply came. That night, the candle went out on its own. Not from wind, not from one of wax. It simply ceased. The room went black. The watchers froze. One claimed he heard bells. Another claimed he heard his own mother calling from the wall. The novice lit a new flame. The candle reignited without flint. And the man stood again. This time, he walked to the door. He placed his hand on the stone. He turned. He said only, "There are rooms behind your eyes." Then he collapsed. The physician approached, trembling. The man was alive, but faint. His eyes were open, but no longer moved. They waited. Hours passed. The flame dwindled again. Girolamo placed a sheet over the man's body, not from death, but from dread. He could not bear to be seen. In the morning, the body was gone. The room was locked. No one had entered. No one had seen him rise. The sheet remained, folded neatly. The candle was untouched. Only the circle carved by the novice remained. And in its center, a new mark, a closed eye. No records were kept after that. The physician vanished from court records 3 months later. Some say he returned to Vercelli and took a vow of silence. Others say he took his own life. The novice became a recluse in a chapel on Murano, where he painted nothing but wax-white eyes for the rest of his days. The cell in San Zaccaria was sealed, later torn down. But in some winters, when the fog returns thick as sleep, gondoliers say the bell of San Zaccaria tolls not on the hour, but on the breath, irregular, shallow, and distant, as though someone is still counting in the dark, still awake, still waiting. If this piece of history deserves to rest, leave a word. That's how memory survives. Whisper it now. Let the silence carry it. Good night.